Good evening, everyone. It's always nice to look out over the chamber and see all your bright faces. Thank you for joining us this evening. As I call this meeting to order, if you wouldn't mind please making sure you take their lovely little cell phones out and putting those on vibrate or turning them off. Everyone up here will do the same. Greatly appreciate that. That way business is not disturbed. And if you wouldn't mind now taking a moment and joining us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, if you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move to staff questions. Members of the board, do you have any questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, we will now move into public comments, requests, or presentations. And the first item that we have is Huntersville 101 graduation. Ms. Strickland, good evening.
It is my pleasure to be once again up here to share with you the latest graduating class for Huntersville 101 program. In the last 18 months, this is our fourth class. So I counted up the folks that have participated, and during that time, there have been 55 Huntersville residents who have shared their time and their commitment and their energy to learn more about this community. And in my role for community engagement, that just makes me giddy, because that's a big commitment. This session, we added an 8th week. That's 8 weeks together in the evenings to learn more about this community. So we even have a wait list for fall. So if anybody's interested, we will have another class in the fall, and we will continue this class. I'm sure Bobby or someone will make sure, they will make sure that it happens. If not, someone on the board will. So it's my honor to stand here again and to just share with the other people in the audience that these are residents who have said, I want to learn more about my community, and I'm going to come every week for 2 to 3 hours and ask questions and learn, so that maybe someday they serve on an advisory board, maybe they sit on the dais, maybe they run for office here or in other places. But to me, it's the greatest honor to be surrounded by people who really want to get involved and learn more about their community. So I am going to call by name. I don't see everyone, so I'm just going to call everyone's name, and if you would just come forward. Mayor, if you would join me. Everyone gets a graduation certificate or a diploma, but they also get a special pin, which is celebrating the 150th anniversary of the town. So John Alexander, Luisa Amarino, David Bennett, Amy Bruce, Ty Giza. Yes. Debbie Davidson. Dave Edwards. John Koser. Mike McIntyre. John O'Neill. Jeff Rudicelli. Scott Santa Cruz. And Robin Turnton. Thank you again for your time. And I believe Jeff has a few comments for everyone.
Thank you very much. Mayor Bales, Town Board, Town Manager, Town Attorney, on behalf of my fellow Huntersville 101 graduates, thank you for the opportunity to share with you our experience with the spring 2023 session, which just ended. My name is Jeff Rudicelli. I'm new to our community, having recently moved here from Michigan, and I joined our Homeowners Association Board because construction in our neighborhood was finished, and our HOA was quickly becoming responsible for many things. The problem is, we knew nothing about what most of these items were or what requirements we would have going forward. This is when I met Kim Strickland, and she shared with me the details of the Huntersville 101 program and the opportunity to meet people in departments like planning, engineering, and public works. I quickly realized the answers I was looking for would come from participating in this program. Every week, the Huntersville 101 program had information which is useful to our neighborhood. Let me give you some examples. Our neighborhood has 3 sand filters, which are in the process of receiving final approval and being turned over to our HOA. What responsibilities do we have to maintain sand filters for years to come? I have no idea. I've never done anything like that before. But in the Huntersville 101 session covering public works, we learned about stormwater management and erosion control measures, and I met Ann Lofton, who's been extremely helpful in providing documentation so we can plan for the inspection and maintenance of our sand filters. Another example of how the Huntersville 101 program has helped us is that our neighborhood doesn't have a speed limit sign anywhere. It's rather new. Can we put up a speed limit sign? Can we put it anywhere we want? Can we set the speed limit? All of these questions are very simple, but none of them I had answers to. However, Cecil Talbot in Land Development has guided us through the process of installing a speed limit sign at the entrance to our neighborhood. We also had the chance to meet Major Graham of the Huntersville Police Department, soon to be Chief Graham. In addition to providing an overview of the police department, he described several of the community outreach programs that the police department does each year. Our social committee intends to contact the Huntersville Police Department to see if an officer can stop by our fall neighborhood picnic and chili cook-off competition to interact with our residents and the young people of our neighborhood and perhaps act as an honorary judge. Huntersville is fortunate to have Major Graham leading the professional men and women of our police department. I, for one, sleep better at night. There are other examples, and I know my fellow graduates have found this program to be very helpful as well. I'd like to close by saying, Kim, thank you for offering this program and sharing with you the deep resources that you have within our town, and thank you as well to each of the department heads who took time to teach us about their areas of responsibility over the last 8 weeks.
This class gets to go out and have a picture taken. The rest have to stay.
Post-graduation party.
Next up. I know, I'm like, wait, I sat down and got comfy, and I can't sit down and get comfy. Wanting to make sure I do these in order. So we have 2 proclamations this week, and if Mr. Bill Russell from the Lake Norman Chamber would join me, I would greatly appreciate that. The first proclamation is for Small Business Week. Whereas the town of Huntersville, North Carolina recognizes and values the dedication and entrepreneurial spirit of small businesses that keep the state and American economy growing stronger. And whereas there are over 994,576 small businesses with employees in North Carolina alone, representing a majority of the total number of businesses with employees in the state. And whereas the income of North Carolina's small business owners totals over $20 billion, and these businesses employ 1.7 million North Carolinians, or 44.4% of the state's non-farm private workforce. And whereas there are over 28,500 small businesses with employees in Mecklenburg County and over 69,000 sole proprietors, representing a majority of the total number of businesses in the county. And whereas it is the collaborative mission of the town working with the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, Lake Norman Economic Development Corporation, Visit Lake Norman, and the Small Business Administration to help our businesses grow and create new jobs in the community and Lake Norman region by providing exemplary workforce training, financial assistance programs, and research and technical assistance. And whereas the town of Huntersville appreciates the support of our small business community by the Chamber of Commerce, Central Piedmont Community College, Small Business Technology Development Center, and our SCORE volunteers. And whereas during the week of April the 30th through May 6th, the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce is celebrating Small Business Week. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of the Town of Huntersville, do hereby proclaim April the 30th through May 6th of 2023 as Small Business Week in Huntersville, and urge all citizens to acknowledge and celebrate the achievements made by small businesses both locally and nationally, and to further support your local businesses by shopping and buying local. And he can't go anywhere because I have another proclamation to read this evening. Whereas the town of Huntersville is a community that supports one another and is committed to supporting our citizens in a variety of ways. And whereas the citizens of Huntersville had continued to support first responders, neighbors, friends, and local and regional businesses. And whereas acts of kindness have been the genesis of this support and remain the backbone of the Huntersville community. And whereas by recognizing and highlighting acts of kindness, the business members of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce and the Huntersville Connection Business Group are working together to make Huntersville the kindest community in the country, with a Week of Kindness event that starts May 1st through May 7th. And whereas Kindness Week will be the beginning of a continued kindness effort. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of the Town of Huntersville, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the first week of May as Kindness Week in Huntersville, as we encourage our citizenry to make Huntersville the kindest community in the country. Thank you.
We'll get this on the connection call in the morning.
Will do too.
Madam Mayor, I think we should have the two reps that represent our boards up there on that picture. Go ahead,
I would,
go ahead.
come on up.
Visit Lake Norman. Go.
Let's get in this,
Okay.
and that way we can get everyone.
I'm way over here. It's fine.
Thank you all. So we're now moving to presentations with the manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor. I know all these people came to hear this tonight, I'm sure. If this doesn't put them to sleep, I don't know what will. So I'll try, I know there's a lot of people here, so I'll try to go through this fairly quick, and I'm gonna hit the high-level details, and you'll see this at least two more times, maybe in an abbreviated version of it, but a lot of this stuff you've seen before related to CIP, et cetera. So I'm gonna make sure I get my clicker working first. Bobby's, who's working it over there? Me? Let me just make sure. All right, I got it now. Just want to make sure. All right, so again, I'm going to round the numbers instead of reading numbers off of, 73, 305, 427. So I'm going to just round numbers, make it easy, and we'll go through this. So I'm here to present a balanced budget tonight. The total budget is roughly $112 million. In that budget includes multiple different funds. Under the general fund is roughly $73 million, which includes restricted funds. The enterprise funds, which includes several, which is electric and HFFA, are both enterprise funds. The electric is roughly $30 million, and HFFA consists of roughly $3.8 million. And there's special revenue funds also. There are three of those: Transportation Reserve, Commerce Station, and Land Development, which equals roughly 4.1. Add all those up together, that's where you come up with a $112 million budget. Where folks probably want to see is the next slide or so, but FY24, the town's assessed value is $15.4 billion. There will be, that's net of the appeals loss, which is what the county estimates roughly 2%. When you look at reevaluation, some folks' property went up 80%, 100%, 10%, et cetera. But the average is roughly 42%. That includes residential, commercial, all of the above. What does 1 penny generate? So when we talk about tax rate, the town's tax rate right now is 24 cents. But in the next slide, you'll see I'm proposing that to drop down to 19 cents. We'll talk about revenue neutral, et cetera. But 1 penny generates roughly $1.5 million based on the new assessed valuation. Previous year was $1,085,000. So if you did the math, that would roughly been, the town's assessed value would have been 10 billion and some then instead of 15 billion. One of our largest general fund revenues is property tax. As I said earlier, what is revenue neutral rate? So when you're in a reval year, we're supposed to present, calculate and disclose what a revenue neutral rate is. That's 17.6 cents. We're at 24 cents right now. As a manager, I'm recommending that the tax rate be 19 cents. That's roughly 8% over revenue neutral, which is a 1.4 cent increase over the revenue neutral rate. Again, our rate right now is 24 cents. And if you can look at any home value. We just picked a home value roughly $300,000. And if you average, like some folks, as we said, some at 80% increase, some are 40, some are 10, some are 100. But if the average was 42%, and you're looking at a $300,000 house, that will cost a homeowner roughly $89 a year. So it's a $600,000 house, times that by 2, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other side of things, if we all have, well, not all, most of us have vehicles, and if you get a tax bill on your vehicle and you plug in your tax rate on that at a 24-cent tax rate now, obviously would be higher. If we're dropping the tax rate down to 19 cents, you should see some savings on your vehicle unless you traded in your old vehicle and got a brand new vehicle. So I'm just making an assumption you had the same vehicle you had last year, then you should see some drop in that. So I'm speeding through these a little bit. Stop me if you need to. You will see this multiple times. Property tax, sales tax, and utilities sales tax are our top three revenues, and that compromises roughly 72% of revenue. Solid waste fee is proposed to go up an additional $18 annually. So that will be $144 annually for the solid waste fee. That will pay for approximately 59% of the solid waste collection. They're expecting no changes to the fees, a vehicle fee of $20 and the stormwater fee proposed to stay the same. As far as positions in this budget, there are 5 new positions. 4 of them are funded in the general fund. 1 is through land development fees. Those 4 positions in the general fund, 2 are related to fleet maintenance. We're starting to bring in-house some of the fleet maintenance items, more of the low-key. We're not changing engines, building a new car, paint body. It's more of tires, oil, et cetera. So we're starting to bring that in-house this year for the first time. We're adding an additional park maintenance position, a risk manager, and then the last position is related to land development fees, which is a stormwater inspector. Excuse me. As far as personnel pay proposal, in here we look at COLA every year. So COLA is the CPI for 2022 from January to December was 8% exact. So we didn't make up this number, I didn't pull this number out of the air. The COLA adjustment proposed is 8%. If you're familiar with the 2023 Social Security adjustment, it was actually 8.7%. In this budget also is fund the average 2% merit pool, maintain our pay ranges, so the minimum maximum would be increasing by 5%. And then there's also a cost associated with the retirement system, which required increased funding percentage, which is roughly $134,000 total. From an operating side of things, for the fire department, if you recall, the last few years we've been trying to increase the part-time pay at the fire department. We are proposing to increase that pay $2 an hour, which will raise that up to $17.50. That's an impact of roughly $570,000. Right at this point in time, we don't have any full-time employees funding this budget. If you call the board, ask staff to work with the fire department to do what I'll say an internal study to look at how we bring in full-time firemen. How does that work? Deal with the personnel policies, deal with all the policies related to bringing that in-house. And the reason we're moving in that direction, as the board is aware of, at certain times of the year, we don't have firemen to fill positions all the time. We have firemen, and maybe 3 on a truck, 4 on a truck. So it's running into a problem all over. We're the largest town still left in the state that does not have full-time fire. So we are moving in that direction, and the study is to help guide us in that direction and make sure we get our policies, et cetera, in place. So I anticipate if you see that dash after the study, it says possible budget amendment later in FY24. Depends on what comes back, but I'm just telling you now, we may be coming back at a later date, January-ish or later, to maybe do some budget amendment related to bringing firemen in-house. If we get that done sooner, great, we'll come back to you. Solid waste additional costs. As you know, we're entering into a new contract. That should be coming to the board. I anticipate here in June, maybe sooner, I'm gonna say June, and that additional cost, and we have obviously new development, bringing on new residential customers, et cetera. That's roughly a $700,000 increase. This year, we're handling external agencies differently, nonprofits. The legislation changed, I think it was last year, on how we deal with nonprofits. So what we're proposing to do is not get hung up on Anthony Roberts Soup Kitchen, on whether, I'm gonna pick on Stacy today, Commissioner Phillips, if she doesn't want to fund Anthony Roberts Soup Kitchen in a $112 million budget for $1,000, that's don't get hung up on $1,000 in a $112 million budget. Let's set that aside and we'll come back and vote on those individually. So the plan this year is, once we get through the budget, as soon as we get through that, is to come back and deal with those entities. I think there's roughly 9 or 10. Total, if you funded everything, is maybe a little bit north of 200,000 at various costs associated with each one of those, so we'll tackle those individually. As far as police dispatch is, we're dispatched by CMPD. We're working on that agreement. Right now, we anticipate an increase in costs of roughly $550,000, but hopefully I can do better than that. And I'm having some discussions now with the manager of Charlotte, so hopefully we can do a little bit better on that price, but right now, that's what we have in here until we continue work on that project, on that contract. Also, if you recall, doing the downtown master plan that the board just recently adopted, there are quite a few items that are coming out of downtown master plan. This is just scratching the surface, but some of those items are tree assessments. A Wooner, don't ask me to describe what, well, I can describe what it is, but don't ask me to give you an example of one, because I don't know where one is close by that I can probably show you. But it's basically a walkable street alley, that attracts businesses on that street, more pedestrian friendly than cars. And then Safe Streets, so we're proposing to fund $150,000 associated with some of the downtown plan items. Debt expenditures, we have existing debt that we'll continue to fund from prior years. There is, as I think earlier we talked about Town Hall, we'll continue to move that forward. But by the time if the board moves forward with an installment financing, by the time the first debt payment would come on, we'd only receive one of those. Typically, there are two of those in a year. By the time we would bring this on board, there would only be one. So at FY24, there's a $1.5 million in for that one debt service payment. As far as bonds, we talked about this earlier. Depending on what the board does, there's nothing related to bonds in this budget because citizens have to approve it. If they approve it, then we will move forward with those debt issuance, and then that would be in future actual budgets. So I'll just skip on over the last one. There we go. As far as some of the general fund departmental capital, we are moving forward with some electrical charging stations. More folks are moving to electric cars, so you'll start to see more charging stations in our parking lots, whether it's in parks, whether it's at Town Hall, et cetera. Replacing police vehicles, which is a every year thing. Upfit to town fleet maintenance, if we're bringing in fleet maintenance. Obviously, we've got to do some equipment upgrades at the shops. Various park and rec vehicles and trucks and cameras in the parks. To park upfits like a disc golf course, these are just named some, Berry Park, North Meck Park, tennis court resurfacing, Holbrook Shelter. Various power bill replacements who are replacing equipment. Same thing with stormwater and power bill funds, replacing the dump truck. Some of the major capital, Main Street construction, continuing that project to finish that out, roughly $4 million. North Meck Park Greenway, roughly 1.8 towards that. And then finishing off the Rosedale Nature Park, there's a small connection from the park over to the Greenway. And then we're starting our share of the design on the Park Huntersville Greenway. There'll be later phases on that. This is just the design phase. Various sidewalks throughout town. The Huntington Green sidewalk, which I think is well over a mile long, roughly 1.4 million. And then if you add all these up, should add up to roughly 8.5 million in major capital. The transportation reserve, various capital here, debt from previous years, working on Beatty's Ford Hambright, Beatty's Ford Gilly Road, and then Reese Boulevard Van Story intersection. And then whatever projects, as we continue to work on capital projects, obviously road projects, unless it's a tiny project, they roll over year after year after year. Some of these projects roll on for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, depending on how big of a project it is. And as far as the audited transportation reserve fund, we roughly in 22 we had roughly 3.7 million there. If you want to know what the $20 vehicle fee generates, which we put all back into transportation, is roughly $1 million. Other funds that we have out there and the impact to the other funds, tourism fund, we've started to recover obviously from COVID and post-pandemic. We're funding less capital there, and the reason for that is we funded so much in FY23, so the capital in 24 is down some. Commerce Station, basically, where our 3-town business park is, we will use those funds to do the contributions for each town. Powellville revenues are pretty flat. We are rolling through fund balance quite a bit just because we're funding projects, et cetera. We are decreased budget by roughly $775,000. That's just due to various projects rolling off on land development. The fee changes, Stephen talked about, well, that's later on the agenda. Got so much on there, I forgot. He is talking about that later at the end of the agenda on the fee changes to various tiers. All but one will remain below Mecklenburg County fee level. I think we had told you before, so I just want to be clear on this. I think we told you there were no fees less than, but Stephen's going to explain there's actually one that may be higher than Mecklenburg County. And then they fund the additional stormwater inspector. Revenue side from the electric fund, I know folks are about to go to sleep, so I'm going to try to get through this. From the electric fund side of things, we are going to propose to increase fees on the industrial, but not on the residential and commercial side. So 2% increase. We will be dipping into fund balance. One of the things that we're continuing to work on, we've got to build redundancy into our system. So, basically substations and connecting wires and making sure that they continue to connect for that redundancy, so that if we have an outage, we can pull from another substation to turn that back on. From a expense standpoint, most of it comes from purchase power and then also capital, but the budget is fairly flat. The HFFA, which is our aquatic center, is roughly a 3% increase. Membership revenues is expected to increase by 3%. The capital there this year proposed is a gas pool heater, boiler, and pool lighting. If you recall, the board approved the major air filtration improvements already, so we're working through that, and we should complete that in FY24. ARPA funds, you've heard us talk about ARPA funds. You recall we received roughly 4.8 from Federal Treasury, and we also received another $12 million. What we're doing with those is planning on that, and the reason we're planning salaries is because that's the easiest thing to do. What we don't want to do and to meet those deadlines so that the government doesn't come back, federal government or state government come back and claw those back. Now, by doing that, it frees it up and makes it easier to use for projects. So even though we're planning salaries, what we're doing is using those on capital projects. So instead of keeping up with each individual project and having to do all the paperwork on that, by planning, you're able to take that, put it in the fund balance, and then use it on capital projects. So that's what we're doing. A good example would be like we're talking about the sidewalks tonight in Pottstown. Continue to, move that project. It's just a small example. So next steps on the budget are what I would tell you, if you're really bored, go read the 200-page document. If you want to save a little time, maybe spend time on the manager's message, which is 6 or 7 pages, which will give you sort of highlights. And then at the end of it, there's a detail of contract services in the final section of the document. And then final page is actually the revenue neutral calculation. It will be posted, Patty tells me to be posted Wednesday, May 3rd on the website, so you can read all 200 plus pages if you like. And then budget public hearing, May 15th. We'll have some time to have budget workshops between now and then. I'm sure Jackie's going to send out an email saying, hey, would you like to have budget workshops between now and May 15th? And then even if we have to after that, and then hopefully we adopt the budget June 5th. Mayor, that's it. I know that was a lot of wind, and I'll stop there in case you have any questions, but you will hear this many more times.
Any questions at this point for Mr. Roberts? Just in the very beginning, first blush, I would just like to say, creating this document takes a lot of work, and I know you didn't do it just by yourself.
I did 0.
So let's take a moment and thank those who did. Ms. Patty, thank you so much. Jackie, thank you as well. And of course, Anthony, and all the department heads who came forward and presented their plan and their departments to you and your staff. With no other questions, we will, Commissioner Boone?
I have just one question about the dispatch from CMPD or the town of Charlotte. $550,000 increase, what is the percent?
So the last number, and I'm going to round, if I recall, was $337,000. I'm looking around for
Yes.
Jackie or Patty who memorized numbers. It's probably 337 and some change. This one was expected $800 and some thousand. So thus the concern. And we are looking at other options, but ideally, it makes sense to go back with CMPD at this point in time and work through other options. But hopefully, my conversation with Marcus Jones will, that's a lot to be thrown on without any notice.
And that was what, less than 2 months notice, because the contract ends June 30th,
June 30th, and I think we got the new number
a couple weeks ago.
Friday, 2 weeks ago, something like that, last week. So
Yeah, hopefully you can.
hopefully I can work some magic.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Hopefully you can work your magic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we have one person who has signed up to speak. Ms. B.J. Caldwell, as you come, it is so wonderful to see you this evening. It's been a while. You have, just to remind you, 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Betty B.J. Caldwell, and I live at 14521 New Haven Drive. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be back. But, you know, it's not on the best of terms. So let me just read you my paper so you can get to the point. About a month ago, Mr. Samuel James contacted me and requested my sharing remarks from the Pottstown community's perspective for the 150th anniversary of Huntersville. At that time, there were many narratives for me to choose from that may seem more appropriate than the one I have written and want to share tonight. In the past month, a situation developed that shed a new light on governmental entities and how their employees react, respond, respect, disrespect residents in a non-friendly demeanor. Discrimination is at work by the two park and rec departments operating in town. Each one appears to be playing favorites against Pottstown residents over issues that are pertaining to us. Each one, excuse me, I'm sorry, let me get it right. We are having a little issue over the Verhoof Drive shelter for a Juneteenth holiday celebration. Historically, we've been overlooked and discounted before, but to be denied use of a facility after reserving it is a little unusual. That is why this document is being shared, and it may be worthy of a concern, at least to me it is. And there is a video that I also shared the other week, so if you need to look at it to be sure you have my words, that's it. And I had intended to have this document taken to the notary to be sure that you understood my words were correct. I wasn't trying to fool anybody. Residents in the Pottstown area are uncomfortable in our own community because of gentrification issues. We feel that we are being slowly erased, but surely. Neighbors are valued more than residents, and neighbors are the new people to the area, and the residents are people who look like me, pretty much. So, oh, and you know what? I forgot to give y'all a copy. You know you get your copy. Now let's fast forward to 2023, the Juneteenth event. Early in April of 23, residents contacted Huntersville Park and Rec to secure the Verhoof shelter and the space at the rec center. The rec center was already booked up, so that was okay, but we were successful in obtaining the shelter for Sunday, June 18, 2023. The Pottstown Heritage Group and I are working together for this event. But the Thursday before Easter, thank you. I appreciate the time, but know that there are issues that need to be addressed about this, and I suggest you to please look at the video. Thank you, and I have to make my way out.
For you. Thank you, Ms. B.J. There are no other individuals signed up to speak under public comment. So we're now going to move to agenda changes. Are there any agenda changes this evening? Commissioner Boone?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda for the following changes. The location for items 8G, 8H, and HI should state the Huntersville Recreation Center located at 11836 Verndorf Road, Huntersville, North Carolina 28078, instead of Town Hall. Item 8J to the consent agenda to approve a revised meeting schedule for the Huntersville Board of Commissioners reflecting the location of the June 5th, 2023 meeting at the Huntersville Recreation Center located at 11836 Verndorf Drive, Huntersville, North Carolina 28078, instead of the Town Hall.
Second.
There is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? None opposed? Is there a motion to adopt? Well, I guess that was it. We don't need to do that. Oh, we do need a motion. Okay. We do need a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
There's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. There's a motion by Commissioner Phillips, a second by Commissioner Kidwell. All those in favor? None opposed. That motion carries. We will now move to our very first public hearing, item 9A. Conduct a public hearing on petition R22-07. This is the Town One Mixed Use Center. A request by Tree Nail Development to rezone 69.41 acres located at the intersection of Mount Holly Huntersville Road and Hambright Road from corporate business and corporate business conditional district to transit-oriented development residential conditional district, transit-oriented development employment district conditional district, and highway commercial conditional district and special use conditional district. Mr. James, how are you this evening?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Before you enter your staff report, actually, you go ahead and enter your staff report into the record, but I do want to take a moment to recognize our planning board members after you're done.
Okay. So please enter the staff report into record.
Thank you. And now, with our planning board members who are here this evening, if you wouldn't mind standing up, introducing yourself so that everyone knows that you are here. Thank you, all three, for being here. All right, Mr. James, I turn it over to you now.
So R2207, Town One Mixed Use Center, conditional rezoning. So the rezoning request basically is going from commercial or corporate business and corporate business conditional district, there on that small corner on the front, to special purpose conditional district, highway commercial conditional district, transit-oriented development residential conditional district, and transit-oriented development employment conditional district, which would be the first one in town if it were approved. The proposed uses, it's a mixed-use development, so pretty much anything under the sun. You've got warehousing, commercial uses, multifamily, which is in the residential section, and some office and retail uses. What you see here on the screen is the proposed plan. There's 4 proposed zones that I just previously stated. Within the entirety of this plan, there's 747 proposed multifamily dwelling units on 19 lots, so it is a major subdivision. 419,300 square feet of proposed commercial space. Some of that is in the commercial district and the SP district, and then others are throughout, some in the highway commercial district. And then a small portion in the residential district for mixed use, and then a good portion in the employment TOD district. It is a high-density development for stormwater. They're proposing 56.9% impervious surface. The plan meets our open space requirements. It also meets our tree save requirements of 30%. They're proposing 32.7% tree save. The adjoining land uses you'll see on the next screen here. This is the context map of the proposed rezoning. The big one you'll see there is the future Cats Park and Ride to the south. This is the reason where you have this TOD node, as well as its proximity to I-77 and the interchange there at Hambright Road. You've got other industrial warehousing, light industrial uses, mostly surrounding it. Approved rezoning for an athletic ball field, but mostly what you have is corporate business type businesses in the vicinity. So this rezoning ties in a mixed use aspect of that with some residential. I'm going to go into the 4 different districts, break those down individually, and then we'll talk about them as a whole at the end. So a little bit about the intent of a TODR. They're established to support higher density residential services, a mix of retail and some smaller employment uses. So some, in this particular plan, in between the TODE and the TODR, on one of the main entrance roads on off of Hambright Road, there's a pedestrian corridor there with some mixed-use buildings. It's a mixed-use corridor, so they'll have some service uses and some retail uses within a mixed-use building type. So it meets that intent of that part of the district. Generally, they're found within a half-mile catchment area of a designated rapid transit system. So you've got the Cats Park and Ride there to the south. There'll be a pedestrian way through that intersection, and establishes a residential village within a 10-mile walk of the transit system. And it meets all 3 of those major pieces of the intent of that, of transit-oriented development. This particular TODR section, and you can see the breakup of the districts on the screen, includes 21 multifamily buildings, totaling 747 multifamily units. TODR promotes less parking spaces because of its pedestrian optimization. They are providing 1,257, which is over the minimum, but it's not over the maximum of 1,400 parking spaces. So there's a lot of shared spaces within, and a lot of those shared spaces are in the TODR section of this plan. The ordinance calls for 15 dwelling units per acre minimum. This plan proposes 21.9 dwelling units per acre with an FAR of 0.35 minimum, which they will meet. These are some of the renderings of the schematic architectural for the TODR section. As you see on the top right, that's the mixed-use pedestrian corridor for business, where there's some retail and service, some smaller scale service and retail. Then the other 3 photos there are the walk-up type apartment buildings and some townhomes. Now moving to the TODE portion of the rezoning. TODE establishes and accommodates for general office use, supports a highly pedestrianized setting. You see the down at the bottom right corner are the 2 main TODE buildings. They're, well, not the main ones, but the highest density level ones. There's a 7-story proposed office building and a 7-story proposed parking deck there on that corner. And then right across from there is their portion of TODE within that pedestrian business corridor there. And also, this is established to be within a 10-mile walk of designated rapid transit systems. What did I say? Definitely not 10 mile, 10 minute. We would not be doing this if it was 10 mile. Thank you for clarification there. The minimum FAR here is 0.35. Preferred is 0.5 to 1.5. And they meet all of those. It slightly goes over one of the preferred on lot 16, but they either meet the minimum or they're in that preferred range. Here's some of the architectural renderings of the TODE. As you see on the top left, that's the 7-story office tower, and across from that would be the deck. Again, the pedestrian village there to the right of that, and 2 lower sections. There on the corner of Hambright and Mount Holly Huntersville Road is the proposed highway commercial portion of this plan. It does have one existing building on that. It's generally an office building now, and I think they're proposing to keep the same type of use. There's 2 drive-through style businesses proposed there as well. One multi-tenant building there at the very corner of Hambright and Mount Holly Huntersville. The parking is proposed to be shared throughout, but they meet the minimum parking within that HC district. The district meets the intent of highway commercial, Article 3.2.7. One thing staff would like to see shown more are the renderings of the 2 highway commercial drive-through style buildings, just to make sure they keep the same style as the rest of the pedestrian village there. Here is the rendering they do provide for the corner multi-tenant building. And the last district proposed is special purpose conditional district. That is composed of lots 1 through 5. They're more like the rest of the general area, flex space, light industrial, outdoor storage, and then some other commercial uses. The plan for SP is very schematic in nature. So they would like to reserve the right to change some of the buildings slightly as the plan progresses. They've requested some modifications within this district. One being on lots 1 and 2, they've requested a 60-foot buffer from Mount Holly Huntersville Road. The plan actually calls for a 40-foot buffer, so I don't know if that's just an error in the drawing up of the plans. So that's one clarification staff would like to see from the applicant is it 40 or is it 60? We're mostly in favor of the modification if it meets the general screening and buffering standards of the ordinance, since it is like generally like the compatible businesses around it. Another modification asked, you can kind of see there, there's a cul-de-sac. That's Public Road A they propose. Public Road A is proposed at 380 feet. The code allows 350 feet within the subdivision ordinance. So there's a 30-foot modification request there. And then Building W2, which is to the north of the end of that cul-de-sac. This was not a request, but it's one that staff has found throughout the review. In order to meet the standards of the ordinance for architecture, the road has to front the building throughout. As you can see, the building is cut off about halfway. So that would be a modification request that they would need to ask for. And we would like to see some more architecture on that front corner to meet the intent of the ordinance. Here's renderings of how the SP buildings could look. So some other modifications throughout the plan as a whole. The applicants have requested to, excuse me, to allow for side yard parking. Staff requests a little more clarification on that because the way the ordinance reads, side yard parking is allowed a certain percentage on the frontage of some building lot types. They have showed side yard parking in the plan, but we would like to meet with them more and understand exactly where and why they're needed, and to make sure that the screening and landscaping to screen that additional parking meets the intent of the ordinance. Along I-77, the town requires a 50-foot buffer for any uses adjacent to I-77. They have provided a 50-foot buffer, however, they're requesting to be able to grade 30 feet into that for their foundations in their building. The code calls for for the vegetated buffer to remain, so they would need modification for that. Staff is generally okay with this, with the idea of any specimen trees within that area are mitigated, even if they're not required to be mitigated for the plan itself, since they are at their 30%. But if there are any specimen trees within the area, there is one I've seen that is mitigated for and put in the general area of that buffer. And then the last modification request, as I previously mentioned, there's two 7-story buildings there along Hambright Road. One is a office building, one is a parking deck. The code requires any building that's over the scale and volume of existing buildings, that they reduce the perceived scale and volume of that building. Between lots 18 and that's on 18 and 14. However, between or next to that lot, there's a single-family residence. So they would need a modification to allow those two buildings without reducing the perceived scale and volume. There's a little bit more detail of that modification request. The two 7-story buildings are A1 and 2 there, as shown in the rendering. Generally speaking, staff is okay with this request. It does meet Land Use Policy 8.3 to encourage transit-oriented development where it's suitable, which it is, where the CATS Park and Ride Station is approved for. We have one minor revision request, and it goes along the same lines of that same area. As you see on the screen, that parcel where the leftover pieces where a single-family residence is located, if that parcel does get developed in the future, it would likely not get a driveway on Mount Holly Huntersville Road. So a stub street would be the best way to go about not leaving that landlocked, for lack of a better term. So we'd like to see a stub access there along their driveway that they're proposing for the in between that and the two 7-story buildings. As far as transportation improvements go, this TIA was deferred to NCDOT. Kimley Horn did an analysis of possible improvements. You see on the screen is their laneage figure. It shows all the recommended improvements in this area as it pertains to this development. There's also other developments around that have the same recommendations. In the staff report, it digs into in detail each of those either lights or storage areas for cars or turn lanes, whatever it might be. But DOT has not sent their approval of the TIN yet. As far as the CMS impact statement goes, as you see on the screen are the 3 schools in the general area that would service this district. They are all 3 at or above capacity. CMS's recommendation was they have concerns about overcapacity at their schools. And lastly, digging into the 2040 plan, you see on the screen there on the corner of Hambright and Mount Hollyville, Huntersville Road, highlighted in yellow there is the proposal. It is within a mixed-use center. It also has a base of an employment center. This proposal would meet the intent of both of those. It would bring some employment as well as some mixed-use residential and some services to the area. So it does meet the general intent of the 2040 community plan. In closing, staff could be in recommendation of this rezoning request with the caveat that some comments and conditions that I've laid out in this presentation are addressed prior to the final hearing. We believe it is consistent with the Huntersville 2040 plan and is compatible with the surrounding land uses. I am here for questions. The applicants are here as well, and they have a presentation for you, but I will stay here for any questions you might have.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Mr. James, you referenced the acronym FAR, F-A-R, a couple times. Could you explain that? Because I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yes. FAR is the total gross floor area of the buildings divided by the lot itself. So, yeah, well, it means floor area ratio.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess I could have said it easier that way.
I don't mind understanding how it works, too. Yeah, it's good to know. And then I don't know if this is for you or the applicant, but you probably answered this. The parking deck, is that included in the total number of parking spaces?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. James at this time? Okay. We have 2 options. The board can hear from the applicant, or the board can hear from we do have a list of residents as well. We can go in order. We've heard from staff, we can hear from the applicant, and then we can go into the public hearing comments if that works for everyone. Okay, so the applicant this evening. As you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Susan Irvin, representing the applicant with Irvin Law Group, 19726 Zion Avenue in Cornelius. I'd like to first of all thank the staff for their hard work on this project. They have been very thorough, very detailed, and we really appreciate the attention to this project. I'd also like to introduce the applicant team. Ben Geisler with Tree Nail Development is the developer. Peyton Woody, the site engineer with Woodbine Design. Steve Blakely, the traffic engineer with Kinley Horn. Richard Bartlett and Kristen Mulkey with Bartlett, Hartley and Mulkey are the architects. And with Irvin Law Group, myself and Robert Irvin. We thank you all very much for your attention tonight. I would like to introduce Ben and ask him to come up and walk through the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks everyone for being here, commissioners, town manager, mayor. I'm going to ask for a little tutorial on how to click through here. Is it just those 2 there?
It's just the forward button there.
Okay. All right. So as Susan mentioned, I'm a developer on the project. I'm a local resident, been here for 16 years. I live in Davidson. My partner on the project is Joey Logano. Those of you who might follow auto racing would know him as a NASCAR driver. He wanted to be here tonight, planned to be here tonight. The NASCAR race in Dover, Delaware got rained out yesterday. They raced this afternoon, so he is not here tonight. But the project's important to him. It's property. It's the first property he bought in Huntersville when he entered NASCAR, started his business here. Huntersville was where they started their family, and Joey's really excited about the project. As local developers, we'll be involved throughout the process. And we also intend to be involved in some of the vertical construction, so we're holding on to some of this ourselves and plan to be involved over the long term. Susan mentioned planning staff's been great. We started working on this last January. Started with a blank sheet of paper and said, what do you guys want to see here? Here's kind of what we'd like to do here. And that brings us to where we are today. So Jesse did a pretty good job going through here. So I'm gonna glaze through some of this, but just for perspective on location, we're kind of down on the southern outskirts of Huntersville there at Hambright and 77. Jesse talked about the 2040 comprehensive plan, and it really, it does call for this type of development, this type of density, this type of mixed use in this area, leveraged heavily off of the CATS rapid transit station that's going in on the west side of 77 at Hambright Road, just south of our site. We'll actually share an entrance with the CATS station. Jesse mentioned context and talked about some of the development around this area. Beltway 77 is the large distribution center site to the south of us. Southeast corner of Hambright and 77 is the Statesville Road mixed-use project, and then there's some additional warehouse and industrial buildings going west on Hambright. The piece that strikes me here is when you look at this versus the 2040 plan, this is really the 2040 plan coming to life. It's good planning going to work. It's the feedback from town residents who participated in that plan. And this is kind of what it looks coming to life. From a zoning perspective, we talked about the 4 different districts. One of the things we wanted to demonstrate here was over where the number 1 is, that's Brighton Town Center. That was developed with some of these same districts. Statesville Road mixed use is number 2 on this chart, developed with many of the same districts. If you look kind of at the patchwork here, there's a lot of TODR, HC, SP in this area. TODE is a new one, but we're the only folks who are coming in with a heavy, more high-intensity employment center as part of our mixed-use project. That then requires a TODE. We talk about mixed-use projects, and that's a big buzzword in land development these days. We feel like our project truly is a mixed use. If you look at the blue areas here, the blue areas are commercial, the green areas are residential. We've kind of highlighted with shading 3 different types of commercial use, 3 different types of residential use. We actually have 5 different distinct areas of multifamily in the project. Different looks, feels, little pockets here, little pockets there, with the intent that when this project is completed over the course of the next 4 to 6 years, that it truly has more of an organic growth type feel to it. Not something that is structured and everything looks the same. I hope you see that in our architectural vision. From an economic impact perspective, we're projecting over $250 million in construction costs, the direct result of the project. That generates about $200,000 in sort of construction value add related tax benefit directly to the town of Huntersville. And as Anthony was talking about earlier, looking at town budgets, using the ad valorem tax and the projected value of these properties at build out, it will generate over $500,000 a year annually in incremental tax benefit to the town of Huntersville. Roughly 850 total jobs. So again, we talk about mixed use. There's a lot of different pieces, parts between office, restaurant, retail, some of the warehouse and industrial, and then some jobs managing the residential as well. The affordable housing piece is a piece that Joey really wanted to be here to talk about. I'm going to speak on his behalf a little bit, and we have some other folks later tonight. For those of you who aren't familiar, affordable housing is housing that's deemed affordable to 80% income based on the average area median income of an area. Currently in Huntersville, there's not a requirement for affordable housing as part of a project like this. Jesse mentioned some of the massing earlier. There is a statute. We do need to require 2 units. As part of that, we're actually proposing 7 units as part of the project. One of the key differences here, and to the best of our knowledge, it's the first time north of in Lake Norman area that somebody has proposed a program like this. most affordable housing gets proposed at 80% AMI. That's a state statute requirement definition of affordable housing. In our project, we have 4 units that we're going to subsidize through the Joey Logano Foundation to bring that 80% down to 50%. That's over a $500,000 commitment towards affordable housing, maintaining that affordable housing for 15 years, and doing that in conjunction with Children's Hope Alliance. Those of you who might be familiar with Barium Springs up in Troutman. They work with foster families, foster kids, and that's a charity that the foundation has supported historically. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. In addition to that, out of the 7 units, we have 2 units that we've identified as being prioritized for first responders. I've been to a number of these meetings over the last year. I recognize that's an issue for the town, just like we're going to prioritize some of these units for foster families and foster kids who've graduated out of the program. We thought that was a benefit to the community as well. I'm going to introduce Richard Bartlett as our architect on the project. We spent a lot of time and energy trying to bring something to life here that really will be a value add to the area, something we can be proud of, and I want him to share his vision. When he's finished, I'm going to walk you through the site plan just in a little more detail and give you a little more information about the project.
I am Richard Bartlett with BHM Architects, 2173 Hawkins Street, Suite B, Charlotte. For Town 1, we are going to create a vibe. The vibe's going to range from modern urban on the commercial side to modern rural farm more on the residential side. We're going to do that by using materials and designs that material and design that is sort of warm and fuzzy, especially on the residential side, and leaning a little bit more to the contemporary on the commercial side. And this is really what it's all about. We're going to create a street life that has street-level retail, bakeries, coffee shops, ice cream shops, which I particularly like, as you can tell. We'll have outdoor cafes, we'll have pocket parks, and that is where all the life is going to be, on the voids between the buildings and the passageways, and it's where you're going to want to be. We're also going to, we've got a lot of land, and we're going to be creating leisure trails, bike trails, dog parks, dog walks, all kinds of, fire pits, all kinds of places to go, decompress, and possibly just work on your computer outside. Ben said I had 2 minutes, I guess. I guess I'm done.
I can promise you there's a lot of time and energy went into that 2 minutes over the course of the last year and a half. But I want to just walk you through the site a little more. Site map here, it's just a little easier to look at left to right. So north is actually to the left, south being to the right. 77 along the top of this diagram. Hambright, where you see the CAT station on the right side. And that's Mount Holly Huntersville coming up across the bottom of the page. The sort of lighter orange buildings near the CAT station, that TODR calls for a higher density within a quarter mile of the CAT station. So we positioned our 3 to 5 story elevator style kind of urban flat building in that area. That helps drive traffic and feed the pedestrian village that is the M1, C1, C2, C3 buildings there between the 2 traffic circles. That's really our sort of mini Main Street. Somewhere where you have restaurants, retail, small office, some plaza space, some outdoor dining. Going up towards the top right corner of this, that would be the tan building, would be more condo-style apartments. A2 is the parking structure. A1 is that Class A 7-story office building, high visibility there at the interstate. Shared parking. I did hear a question about parking in that parking structure. Those 400 deck spaces are included in the overall parking for the site, but not all those spots are included in the residential number that we were looking at. Only a portion of those would be shared residential, and I can get you more answers on that. I don't have those numbers on top of my head, but coming to the south bottom right corner here would be our couple of drive-throughs. We've got a lot of new jobs being created in that area with the warehouse distribution and our project. It's a place to eat. There is nowhere to eat here until you get all the way over to Walmart, and there's a Bojangles and a McDonald's. Otherwise, you got to go to North Lake, or you got to go to exit 23. Bottom right corner would be that neighborhood services, same thing. Place to get your hair cut, place to get your dry cleaning done, Subway shop, that sort of thing. The yellow buildings are our walk-up multifamily, that's a more modern farmhouse look. The tan buildings, sort of in the middle of the site, those are townhomes fronting a green. The orange buildings, C9, 10, and 11, towards the left side of this would be that light industrial commercial flex. We've got about 70,000 square feet there. That's more targeted towards small business. There's a lot of 300,000 and 500,000 square foot buildings being built in Huntersville. There's a lot of 150,000 square foot buildings being built in Huntersville. It's a really tough place right now if you're looking for 8, 10, 20,000 square feet. And then the purple buildings to the north, those are really targeting small business, in particular contractor suites. Might be a plumber, electrician. Those guys have been, and gals have been zoned out. They can't work in their backyard anymore. They can't afford to buy property close into Charlotte where they want to be. That could also be a little bit of warehouse, a little bit of storage. We do have some outdoor storage. There is an error on the site plan that should be 60 feet, just to clarify that. It's 60 feet in modification request. We had a right-of-way dedication change in that area, and we did not adjust for that. So we feel like that's appropriate, though, given the industrial and the Highway 77 around us there. I'll flip through these pretty quick because you've seen them, but this is the entrance coming in across from the CAT station. I'm going to go back. The blue highlights in here is almost 3/4 of a mile of an 8-foot wide pedestrian corridor to funnel people from the northern portions of the site down into that pedestrian village and into the CAT station. We also have over 3/4 of a mile of 10-foot multi-use trail around the perimeter of the site fronting Mount Holly and Hambright. Not to mention all the internal trails and sidewalks. Focal Point building coming in that main entrance up in front of you, likely 2-story restaurant, retail. Coming around that first traffic circle, just a good example of one of those plazas. Looking down that pedestrian village, this is to be that little mini Main Street area. This is actually where that blue pedestrian corridor would dump out into the pedestrian village. The office building at the corner of 77, we think that's a really appropriate place for a building like this. It's at 77, it's at the CAT station. It's as close as we can get to it without generating additional traffic on surface streets. This will be coming back down Hambright, coming towards our main entrance. That's neighborhood services at the corner. Focal Point coming in off of Mount Holly, Huntersville, into the clubhouse area in the distance. Town green in front of the townhomes. That industrial site at the north end of the site, and that's a lot in 15 minutes, but we're really, really proud of what we put together. We hope you guys like what you see, and appreciate everyone's time here tonight.
Spot on. Are there any questions for the applicant? Oh, Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What a refreshing presentation that was. Thank you very much. I have a question for the applicant. If you could pull the site plan back up, just right there, that's fine. The little diamond shaped, it looks like Aaron Cruz owns that property?
That's correct.
Have you shown him this? Because you're really working around him and.
Yeah, no, Mr. Cruz is, he owns the property. We've traded texts, we've had a couple phone calls, we've met in person one time, and he's just not interested in selling. I've made attempts to show him the plans, offered to share the plans with him, and he said, I don't care what you do what you want to do, it's your property, I'm just not interested in selling. And so we've tried to respect that. At some point in the future, I'd certainly like to have another conversation with him about it. We'd love to bring it into our plan at some point, but right now it's not part of it.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Kovacs?
You answered my first one, kind of. I was going to ask about neighborhood services, but to expand on it, will you have any type of grocery store? I'm not talking a full Publix, but any place to get food that would allow for, like, food for your home, not fast food.
Sure. So in that C8 building, we have not identified all the tenants for that. And that's the obvious place for sort of a kind of a mini food, a mini little grocery kind of market type thing. There's certainly a need in this area. We recognize that Walmart would be the closest grocery store other than going up to 23 or down to North Lake.
That's what I was thinking, with Walmart being the closest, and just if this is gonna kind of be a little self-contained type area, access to food would be important.
Sure.
There was another one. I'm afraid. 7 stories. How tall is that?
Probably in the 105-foot range. For clarity on that one, the TODE allows up to 7 stories, so we're not asking for a modification or a variance on that. And we feel like at the corner of Hambright and 77 at the interstate, it actually has the opportunity to be a nice focal point, kind of a brag building for the town.
And you would plan on the parking garage and the building to be the same height?
They probably wouldn't be the same height, but they'd be the same number of stories.
I saw a head shake.
We only need 7 feet clear for a parking deck.
Okay.
We need more like 14 for an office
So it would be a
building.
little bit of a step
Yeah,
down.
it's going to be significantly shorter. And you can kind of see that in those renderings.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of skimmed right over this. You said, talking about the economic impact, but it was the 850 jobs. Is that after construction, during construction, or combined?
So that's it build out. So once this is fully consumed, to take, for example, the 7-story office building, that's 125,000 square feet. We're projecting about 450 jobs there. Seated jobs once complete.
Okay.
And so on and so forth. It does not factor in jobs related to construction.
Great. Any questions? Commissioner Partee?
Traffic. Hambright and Mount Holly Huntersville Road, as you know now, is a nightmare right there. And I see the TA report. The TA assumes that some roadway improvements are completed by other developers in addition to the above list of improvements. Are you included in fixing that roadway or improving the traffic flow of Hambright and Mount Holly Huntersville Road?
Sure. I mean, there's a list of improvements that are established baseline that other developers are in the midst of doing, and then our improvements are on top and above that.
So that's a yes or no? You're involved in that improvements of Mount Holly, improving the traffic flow and the safety of that intersection there?
To mitigate the impact
Yeah.
of our project site and in coordination with those other developers. We met with, I think, 3 or 4 of the 5 developers out there and are working to coordinate those.
Second question, noise abatement. I see that there's going to be an 80-foot buffer between 77 and the residential area of the project. Normally, who builds what's known as the noise abatement walls off of 77? Is that the developer, or is that the state itself? Or is that?
I'd have to defer maybe to Anthony on that because I don't know. Not something we've contemplated.
Okay.
Typically, it's DOT if there's noise abatement walls.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any questions from the planning board is this time? Yes, sir, Mr. Gammon.
Frank Gammon, Vice Chair Planning Board. I've got a bunch of questions, but I can settle those with the Planning Department. But I do want to ask something, maybe for clarification, about the half-mile distance from the Rapid Transit Center. A little less than a year ago, we removed the quarter-mile transit based on the rail, the density there. But maybe I would like the Planning Department, might be appropriate here to kind of explain what that half mile is and what can be put in it. Because I'm thinking what we have, how does that affect the park and ride up at Norcross? Not far from Burkdale.
Mr. Richards, you want to take that one?
Sure. As part of
the half mile, it's considered a 10-minute walk. When you have these rapid transit spots like the Cats Park one right here proposed at Hambright Road or up at exit 23 or up at exit 25, you enable projects to come in and potentially ask for rezoning requests such as this. You look at those and compare them to the 2040 community plan, which clearly shows that this is an ideal area for a higher intensity mixed-use node. You're not going to go stick this out on Beatties Ford Road if there's a bus stop there. But when you have these high-intensity transit stops like the BRT stops that's proposed here for Hambright Road, then you can identify potential projects. That's why we take these into consideration. We do not pre-zone land for TODs or TODRs or TODEs. That's why we take these on a case-by-case basis to make sure we're getting the highest, best uses for the town. All right? Great.
Any other questions from Planning Board? Okay, Commissioner Kidwell, you had another question?
This actually may be for staff. I don't know if you'll know the answer or not, sir. And I'm just piggybacking off Commissioner Partey's comments about traffic. With the TIA improvements proposed, do we know what level of service that takes those intersections up to?
I think I'll let Steve Blake kind of speak to our improvements. Kinley Moore is our traffic engineer.
And what they are now, if you know that?
Maybe get through the answer because he can give you a lot better.
That's fine.
Yes, we can certainly do that and tell you what the levels of service are. A little quicker reference here. Thank you, Thomas.
The fact that you brought it was great, so.
What's that?
The fact that you have them is nice.
So, again, when doing the traffic studies, we're looking at the peak hours. AM peak hour, you probably know this, so I'm just going to iterate it to confirm. But the AM peak hour, morning time, rush hour, evening time, rush hour. So when all the developments are in line, in the context map that Mr. James had shown, when those developments are in place and improvements are in place, the morning peak is going to be a level of service D, and the evening is going to be E in the peak hours.
And that's after everything is completed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And all the development is in place.
Oh, sir, do you know do we know the current level?
The current as it is today is C.
All right.
Yep. The improvements that are going to be included in there to give you a little more background is, and I'm not sure how long y'all have been familiar with that intersection, but it used to be a stop sign, right? Hambright stopped, had little concrete islands in the middle that was taken out. DOT put the signal in. Years later, right turn lanes came, but no left. Without left turn lanes, that intersection's a disaster. And in addition to that, to make it even worse, it's kinked. Okay, when they put the signal in, they didn't fix the through movement at 45 miles an hour. All right, so what's happening as a part of these is that kink is going to be smoothed out with a curve that meets DOT standards to get that through movement to be a very smooth flow in that intersection. And left turn lanes are going to be put in. So the people that want to turn left can get in a pocket lane and sit in the left turn lane and allow the through movements to go. So it's going to be very considerable improvements at that intersection. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other questions from board members at this time, I would like to go ahead and start going through our list of.
Add one thing, because Jesse brought it up in his presentation. We're comfortable addressing staff's comments moving forward from here.
Thank you. So let's move to those that have signed up to speak this evening. The first person who signed up to speak is Robert Irvin. As you come up, if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Robert Irvin, 19726 Zion Avenue, Cornelius. I'm reading this letter in support from a resident who could not make it tonight. Dear Commissioners, my name is Kelly Farr, and I own property at 11324 Statesville Road in Huntersville, just across the interstate from the Town One project. I've been familiar with this part of Huntersville for my entire life, as my father owned the property before. When I learned about the Town One project, I knew it would be a positive for the area. As luck would have it, tonight is my wife's birthday, and as much as I would like to take her to dinner to one of the new restaurants in the future, I am wise enough to know that date night at Town Hall probably wasn't going to go over very well. So I'm writing this letter in support of the Town One project. We lack basic services in this area of Huntersville. There is a significant gap of commercial property for small business owners, and placing much-needed housing across the street from the CAT station and next to the interstate just makes sense. Beyond the makeup of Town One, I was really struck by the design and layout of the project. I ask you to support this project as I believe it is good for the much needed for the area of Huntersville. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please feel free to contact me directly if you have any further questions. Sincerely, Kelly Farr.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Kara Filio. As you come, you have 3 minutes, and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Kara Filyaw, and I'm from 11101 Hambright Road, Huntersville, speaking on behalf of Joey Logano, reading a letter from him. First, I have to say that I'm disappointed to not be able to be with you in person at tonight's hearing. As some of you may know, I'm blessed to be able to drive race cars for a living, and while we typically race on Sundays, Mother Nature had a different idea this weekend. Our race in Dover, Delaware was rained out Sunday and rescheduled for today, so I'm not able to make it. When I got my start in NASCAR, I was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing just up the street, bought our first home in Huntersville, and bought part of this land back in 2010 for our offices. As years passed, we launched Clutch Studios, which has quickly grown into the largest production facility in the Charlotte region. That growth requires expansion, and while considering where to build, we knew we wanted to stay in Huntersville and ultimately decided to acquire some additional property and build back right here at the north end of our proposed Town One project. Early on, my wife and I knew that we wanted to give back and started the Joey Logano Foundation in 2013 with a singular mission of giving kids a second chance who never really had a first chance. Today, we raise roughly $1 million a year and focus our spending on a handful of charities. Anytime I start a new venture, I always look for a way to get the foundation and our partners involved. And when the idea of working to provide affordable housing as part of Town One and doing so in conjunction with Children's Hope Alliance, it just felt right. While the kids in the program are certainly the focus, the foster families I have met through Children's Hope Alliance are consistently some of the best people you could ever imagine, and I have become more and more aware of the challenges facing these kids who have aged out. Affordable housing is generally defined as being affordable to people earning 80% of the area median income and is an increasingly challenging issue. I'm excited to announce that the Joey Logano Foundation, in partnership with Children's Hope Alliance, is making a $500,000 commitment to ensure 4 of our 7 proposed affordable units can be affordable to foster families and graduates earning 50% of the area median income for the next 15 years. In addition to expanding Clutch Studios with a new home, I expect to be developing a number of new buildings at Town One and look forward to bringing a project to our side of Huntersville that the town and our neighbors can be proud of. Joey Logano.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Donna Harris. Ms. Harris, as you come, you have 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record, please.
Donna Harris, and I am at 1226 Tarrington Avenue.
Thank you.
I am here speaking on behalf of Strategic Capital this evening. Dear Huntersville Board of Commissioners, we are the property owners of the industrial development, 77 Beltway, that is south and across Hambright Road from the proposed Town One mixed-use development. It is our understanding that Treenell Development is filing for rezoning property adjacent and north of Hambright Road and adjacent west of Interstate 77 for their future Town One development. Based on conversations with the developer and a review of proposed zoning plans dated April 11th, 2023, we are writing this letter to show support for rezoning of this property for the proposed project and believe this development will complement ours by providing beneficial neighborhood amenities. Sincerely, Richard Horn, Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Doug Bostick. Good evening, sir. As you come, if you'll please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Doug Bostick. I live at 8300 McElwain Road, but I own property at 10632 Mount Holly Huntersville Road. My family moved there to take care of my grandfather who owned the property, and his father, my great-grandfather, owned a whole lot of property in the area from the early 1900s. We moved there in the 50s, and so I've seen a whole lot of change. When people say, well, Huntersville's got too much traffic and too crowded, they don't have my perspective of it. I mean, Alexander was a dirt road. The only north-south roads were Beatties Ford and I-77. So when someone says there's too much traffic now, I totally understand that. But yet it's sort of like the barn doors is open and the cows are out as far as traffic and congestion are concerned. It's here. But yet I would be in favor of Town One simply because of some of the services. My wife would enjoy the shopping. I would enjoy the restaurants. For something like that would probably help somewhat on some traffic as far as getting some services closer to the people who live in the area. So I would speak in favor of Town One, although I would encourage the road improvements that some have spoke to. They're going to be good to get those in place because we surely need those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next person who is signed up to speak is Fred Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson, as you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record, greatly appreciate it.
Fred Ferguson. I live at 9708 Hambright Road. Lived there all my life. My grandpa and them come there in like 1940. I'm the third generation to own the place and the farm. And on that side of town, we have no restaurants, no places to eat or get your hair cut the commercial contractor suite they talk about, I think that would be awesome down the road there because a lot of the small business owners like to have a place to work out of and store their equipment. And with the restaurants, like Mr. Bottis was talking about, the restaurants, it'd be nice to have them on that side of town instead of having to travel to 23 or 25 or something of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next person who is signed up to speak is Sarah Gray. Ms. Gray, as you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record.
I'm Sarah Gray. I'm the CDO for Children's Hope Alliance. I live at 127 Lynn Cove Lane in Morrisville, and I'm here as a representative of Children's Hope Alliance, and we are extremely honored to be a part of this project. We have worked with the Joey Logano Foundation for, almost 10 years, and they have been really good to us. And to be able to provide those 4 units for our children and families is a really big thing for us, and we're really honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who is signed up to speak is Terry DeWeese. Did I get it right? DeWeese, I did. You have 3 minutes. If you'll please state your name and address for the record for us.
I'm Terry DeWeese. I live at 107 Neitza Lane here in Huntersville. I'm the owner and broker in charge of Huntersville Real Estate. I've been in the business of real estate since 1987, specializing in this area. I've been a lifelong area resident except when I was in college and in service. I'm the listing broker for Mr. Dellinger's 8.75 acres on the northernmost parcels of this project in purple, where the purple buildings are. I have reviewed the plans for the complete project and firmly believe that this well-thought-out mix of uses will be a definite asset to this part of Mount Holly Huntersville Road and to Huntersville in general.
Thank you, sir. The next person who is signed up to speak is Tyler Wyatt. Oh, okay. All right. And then the last person who is signed up to speak on this public hearing is John Benjamin Jr. Thank you. Yes, right over here, please. We're a packed room. We've got people sitting out in the lobby this evening. Oh, no.
My name is John Benjamin. I'm at 16112 Old Statesville Road. Been here for over 20 years. I love Huntersville. Small business owner, so I know how this can directly impact and for the good of the community. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. It's consistent with the plan, which is the most important thing, I think, for the future. Transit, and I know that mixed housing would be great for us, and I'm all for it. Love you guys.
Thank you. So that is the last person who has signed up to speak this evening. Before I close this public hearing, board members, do you have any other questions, any additional questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. We will now move to our next public hearing. And I would be remiss if anyone at this point who wants to leave, you're more than welcome to do so. We'll take a moment and let you leave.
Stick around.
You could stick around if you'd like.
Fun times.
And if those that are out in the lobby that would like to come into the chamber, also go ahead and feel free to do so. So we have some more folks coming in. There's some seats up here up front, if you would like. Okay. So now we will move to item 9B, and this is petition R23-02. This is Babe Stillwell Storage, and this is to conduct a public hearing. Mr. James.
Thank you. Please enter the staff report into record. So yes, R2302 Babe Stillwell Storage Conditional District rezoning. So this is the request is for 7603 Babe Stillwell Road, approximately 8.85 acres. The current zone is neighborhood residential. The current land use is agriculture. Proposed zoning is special purpose conditional district for open storage of boats and RVs. Some of the main themes here is going to be buffering and screening. That we do have buffering and screening standards within the town of Huntersville. As you see on the screen here, this is the context map. You've got the proposal there, the white site plan. Couple of key items to pay attention to. That red hatched area going right up through the middle of that is Duke Energy's right-of-way. They limit what can be built under that right-of-way. And basically everything surrounding this proposal is single-family, some smaller subdivision type, and then some larger lots that are surrounding it. So this rezoning request is for 152 space open storage for boats and RVs with approximately a 600 square foot office building on the front that addresses the street. The buffers that have been shown per the application and rezoning plan do not currently meet our buffer requirements. I'll get a little bit more into that in the following slides. It does meet the 30% specimen tree save. They're roughly saving 50% on this plan. The town requires on Babe Stillwell Road for future development a 10-foot side path. They've provided 6, so we're asking is there a modification request here? We aren't sure, but if they were to move forward, it would need to be a modification. The cross-section for Babe Stillwell is non-compliant. They show a sidewalk, it needs a side path. The spacing of the cross-section is not correct. We need street trees along the frontage, as well as 7-foot spacing in between. So again, is this a modification ask? They would need that to move forward. And then the screening viewed from the right-of-way. On the previous slide, we have a opaque screening condition. That would be for any type of open storage. They have not proposed that on the front, nor some of the buffering, the screening is provided. But as you can see on the plan, overall, they've got an asphalt frontage where their parking is in the building, and the open storage proposal is for a gravel lot in the rear and a BMP in the very back portion section. To the sides, they do provide the required 80-foot buffer width. I'll get into the buffers a little bit later. This, we wanted to blow up the Duke right-of-way that I had spoke about before. Duke Power typically allows some vegetation under their right-of-way lines, up to a 15-foot maximum. One key item there too, though, is for maintenance, they reserve the right to take that buffering out if they need to do maintenance. So a large portion of the required vegetated 80-foot buffer is subject to change, even if it was put in. What they could put in is 15-foot maximum height, so some of the shrubs they could add. The code requires large trees, small trees, shrubs, a mix of those within that buffer. So the site plan does not show that now. That would need to be modified to move forward. It is a 186-foot wide right-of-way, so it's a pretty large area, and the buffer is within a lot of that. On the site plan shown, you see to the north some of the tree save, but to the south of that and on the other side of the road against an adjacent property, they only show the screening but not the buffering requirements. For SP zoning, it is required. You see the materials that you need to add. 4 trees per 1,000 square feet, 75% maturing, 50% evergreen, 25% small maturing, plus some shrubs that are evergreen. They have not shown that on the plan. So again, is it a modification ask? They have provided some of the opaque screening from some of the previous slides in that red line area there that does screen the adjacent properties, but the buffering still is not in many places. That blue area is the utility easement. So again, some of that buffering area that would be required could be removed in the future. As far as moving forward with transportation, a TIA was not required for this site. However, worth noting, for the 73 improvements, you can see there's right in coming, would that be east, right out. There's a left in coming, say, from Birkdale Village. If you wanted to take a right out and go towards Denver, you would have to take the U-turn there at the turn lane. So those are some of the improvements you'll see in the future. The big picture item here is the 2040 plan. The red star on the page shows moderate density to low density that is being called for this area moving forward. This plan calls for open storage, so it would not meet that moderate density 2040 plan requirement. So because of that, staff would not recommend approval of it. It's not compatible with the neighboring land uses, and it also does not meet the 2040 plan goals. If you have questions for me, I'm available. I believe the applicant is here if you have questions for them.
Okay, sounds good. We'll start with questions from the town board, if you've got them. Commissioner Kidwell?
What does Duke allow? You said that they don't allow certain things, so what do they allow?
As far as land use, so they would allow this land use under the lines. The problem is the buffering, which is a major part of SP zoning, is an 80-foot vegetated buffer. So the one of the issues there I showed on, you can see it on this screen here, that lower portion of that buffering, and then some of the portion next to Edwin Ray Jones's property, and then the Walsh property to the south. That is subject to removal. So what they would allow for vegetation to be put in there would be shrubs.
Yeah, I'm talking about what other land uses would they allow? If you don't have that right
I
now.
don't have that
can you
information as far as
get it to us?
all the land uses, but they would allow parking and open storage.
I'm going to ask this question, kind of bouncing off Commissioner Kidwell, because as it currently sits, it's zoned neighborhood residential.
Correct.
Can you build in Duke's right-of-way?
Residential.
Neighborhood residential?
You would not be able to build a single-family house in that area. They wouldn't allow a home to be built there, no.
Commissioner Boone?
Jesse, do you know any history of anything else that was proposed for this area before this came before the town?
I personally do not. Ryan's been here for forever, so.
Thanks. We have had a few folks look at this over the time. One idea at one point in time was a church. I know a couple of charter schools have looked at this property. Due to its irregular shape and that power line, it's very difficult to develop. One thing that could be looked at is linked to the county for open space, land banking. Another thing could be a public park. Those are also uses that are allowed by right in our district. Agriculture. Yep, agriculture could always be done as well.
But you don't have any other suggestions for this person who's trying to sell this property other than open,
This time, just
open storage?
parks. A school could look at doing it. A church could look at doing something small there. Agricultural purposes are always there. County's always looking to purchase land for open space requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
I just want to throw in about the agriculture recommendation over and over. My family has a farm with those power lines. They're a bear, so it's almost dead land if you're going to try to farm it.
Very difficult.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, the humming, the buzzing, yeah.
It's very challenging.
Yes, it is.
So if you were to build a church on this property, I'm just trying to understand, what would the buffer requirements be for a church or a school, et cetera?
None.
None, okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Partee, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm trying to roll around in my mind. This neighborhood, let me just state it from a point of view. If somebody wanted to build a storage area where I live, in a nice pristine area, I live in Ladder Springs, I would be pissed off. What is the purpose of dropping a facility like this in the middle of a residential, rural area where you have a lot of commercial property all along 73, all along Statesville Road? So just from my point of view as a homeowner and living in a nice area, which is open space, rural, I have nice animals running through my yard. I can't conceptualize why someone would want to do this. I mean, that's just want to put that out. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Any comments at this point? Planning board members, do you have any questions at this point? Okay. Well, we do have some folks who have signed up to speak. And now is the time for that. Actually, I would be remiss if I didn't, because the last time this was the way we did it, we listened to the applicant before we heard public comments. So if the applicant is here and would like to, if you've got a presentation
There's not a
or
presentation
questions?
on PowerPoint, but the applicant is here.
Okay, great. Good evening, sir. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. My name is Michael Lieberman. I live at 16303 Autumn Cove Lane, Huntersville, North Carolina. And this is Heather Strader.
I live at the same address.
Just to address a few things that were said. Also, we have Henson Foley as our civil engineer, just to address who did all our civil engineering work. James, thank you for going over everything. We live in the neighborhood. This project is very important to us and very close and dear. We drive by this property every day, and we have driven by this property for many years. The property has been on the market for 1,149 days before we put it under contract back in July. And yes, it did go under contract with the church for a little bit, but just to give you an idea, that was 3 years it sat. And you know, land, highest and best use. I got the idea of putting this RV after seeing a very successful one in Buckeye, Arizona, under high tension wires. Another one in Los Angeles, California, under high tension wires. And another one in Columbus, Ohio, under high tension wires. These were all located near lakes and also near communities, similar to what we have here off of Babe Stillwell. I know you guys are very concerned that the surrounding areas are going to be disturbed. More, I'm sure residents of Burkdale are concerned that their neighborhoods are going to be property values down, but that is not going to be the case. I promise you, because they want to have, have you been out to the property, honestly, Commissioner?
We don't do back and forth.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to see if he had been out to the property. But we have materials that will blend in that you're not going to be able to see the property from the street. We're working very hard with James to use planting materials. We're not sure why Henson Foley didn't give the final approval to show the sidewalks and the proposed buffer on the right-hand side. We also talked about having a berm to actually have another little bit on that side so it would prop up and not see the high-tension wires and what's going on inside of the property. So there's been a lot of thoughtfulness and working with what we've heard from our last meeting, James, to plant what is needed. And the lighting, I keep hearing that over and over. If it's going to be an apartment complex or if it's going to be a condo, there's going to be 200 cars. We're going to have 152 spots. You're going to have a lot more cars, a lot more interaction going in and out on a daily basis on that road versus a couple people with RVs pulling them out temporarily and then the high peak of the summer for 3 months. These people spend a lot of money and take a lot of pride in their toys, and they're not going to be racing up and down the road. And I want you to think about, too, there's going to be a proposed fire station that's just as big as an RV going down the same roads. So if that is your concern, then you're going to have the same concerns with these big RVs as you will with the big fire trucks. So we will listen to you. Blythe Landing's across the street. It's a great location. They can use our facilities. CMS or the fire can use our facilities for their boats. We want to work with you. We want to be part of the community. I've also heard that we're doing this in other locations. No, we're a small group. This is it. We're one. This is the only one we're doing. And we hope that, we have your blessing and that we can work together to bring this to the community. It's something that you guys need, because during the pandemic, a lot of people have bought boats and RVs, and you're driving 40 minutes away to store your toys. So there's a need in the community, and that's what we're trying to do, is fill the need. If there's anything, can I answer questions, or how would you like
Board
us to handle it?
members, do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I would, planning board members? Nope, okay. Thank you both
Very good,
very
thank you.
much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, so let's get back to this list here. Deborah McClure. As you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, please. You do have 3 minutes. And you can pull the mic down towards you if you'd like. I know, but we've got to be able to hear you.
Okay, my name is Deborah McClure. I live at 7608 Babe Stillwell Farm Road. And Babe Stillwell is 1 mile long. It's a very narrow road. At the end of the road, close to Burtdale Commons, is a senior development called the Glens. Many of us in our neighborhood, we enjoy walking, jogging, and cycling on that road. If you allow this boat storage facility, I am very concerned about all of our safety. I sent all of you pictures I have taken in the past few weeks as I was walking. One of those pictures was the back of a truck that had just passed, and it showed that the truck itself took up an entire lane of the road. And I'm sure that RVs and boats will be just as wide, if not wider. I also sent pictures. The road itself, the speed limit is 35, which means most people go between 40 and 45. If you turn off of Highway 73 onto Babe Stillwell, you will go around a curve. In the mornings, just as you round the curve, you are blinded by the sun. So just imagine you come a car coming 45 miles per hour around the curve, and you've got either a boat or RV having to make a wide turn because it's a narrow road. That's the only way it can get in and out, is by making the wide turn. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not a matter of when or if something happens. It's a matter of when something serious. There's going to be a serious accident or someone's going to get killed. I also sent you pictures, showed marks of where cars are already running off the edge of the road. And usually that's because, again, the road is so narrow that when cars are going in opposite directions, one of them normally has to go off the edge of the road. I also sent pictures to you showing this is a residential road. It was built to be a residential road. It cannot handle the weight of the heavy vehicles. I sent you pictures showing you the cracks in the road with grass growing between the cracks along with some potholes. All those pictures were taken in front of the proposed area. And then in addition to that, now those are my main concerns, because I'm really concerned about our safety of all of us who use that road and enjoy the road. But in addition to that, the boats and all are going to be stored on gravel. And so some of those boats, will leak gas, they will leak oil, and then to keep the weeds out of the gravel, various pesticides are going to have to be used. Well, eventually that stuff reaches the groundwater. Many of us still have wells because we have been living there for anywhere from 20 to 40 years. So many of us still have wells. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next person who has signed up to speak is Bonnie Logan. Ms. Logan, as you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bonnie Logan, and I live at 7620 Babe Stillwell Farm Road. I've been out there for 38 years. I bought out there when it was just a dead-end dirt road. And I thought, good, I won't have to worry about traffic other than the people buying down here. I knew we'd have growth, but we've just gotten too much growth up here in this small town of Huntersville too fast, in my opinion. But I am very concerned, like Deb spoke about, the safety of all those issues. Plus, they said they were going to have high-end boats, so you're talking big boats. Just last month, I had a big truck come down to the water treatment plant, broke all my power lines, phone lines. That's not the first time. I had to wait 2 and 3 days for them to come out there to get it fixed. So some of these big boats are huge, very big. So that's an issue right there. My mailbox, I can't tell you how many times me and Deb have had to replace our mailbox from the big vehicles and stuff coming down here, down the road. And I just can't understand why a business would want to build into a neighborhood, just like you were saying. That's our home. I've been there 38 years, raised my daughter, wanted to retire there. I'm sorry, it's an issue for me. And I'm begging you, please, don't ruin our neighborhood. There's a lot of other issues going on too, like she's talking about with the water, with traffic, with people up there. They're talking about putting big security lights around the place, and it's gonna shine in your house all night long. You know, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna go to sleep? You're gonna have no privacy. I'd rather have a church out there. I'd rather have some of those other things he was talking about than to have this boat storage building with these, and people all gonna be out on the lake, drinking and partying all day. Are they gonna get to come in at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night and take their boats and put it in the storage? You know, even though they're not gonna be at the office till maybe 9 or 10, but if most storage places work, you get to go out there and come and go as you please, just go in there. So I'm concerned about that, the noise, everything. I just wanna save my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Karen O'Neill. Ms. O'Neill, as you come, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Karen O'Neill, 7611 Babe Stillwell Farm Road. My husband Ed and I live in the corner property right there, next to the property being requested to be rezoned. We've lived there for almost 20 years, and we chose to live in a residential area, not amongst industrial business. The 2040 plan recognizes the importance of keeping our neighborhood residential and not devaluing our homes or our way of life. This type of business will not blend with the existing housing character, and I'm also afraid will open the door for future commercial development. Mr. Lieberman keeps stating that this will be beneficial to us, except that we already live in an area where we have the land to store our boats, so we don't need the storage. There are over 15 other storage facilities in the town of Huntersville alone that have outdoor storage. They're not in residential areas because of the safety hazards that special purpose zoning is defined as. I have with me over 200 petition signatures here that are opposed to this rezoning. Mr. Lieberman stated that he was our neighbor, that he knew what was best for us, that this would blend in with our mom and pop houses. I don't believe he does, because if he did, the 200 people on my petition would not have signed. The people here tonight would not be saying what they're saying. The 2040 plan that you have all put so much work into, it clearly outlines that this density does not support commercial business. And I support local business. My husband owns one. I support small local business. But this is not a small local business. This is an industrial business, and it doesn't belong amongst strictly residential area. So I am asking you to please consider what the homeowners that you have heard from here tonight have said. I respectfully ask you to consider our concerns and what the outline, the 2040 plan for Huntersville and Babe Stillwell, what that shows, because that should take precedence, not just what Mr. Lieberman thinks, who is currently in contract. He doesn't even own the land yet. And I respect the fact that you're trying to sell the land, and it's a very difficult piece of land to sell. It's a beautiful property. But no apartments are going there. And he keeps threatening us that. He keeps telling us it's either this or we're going to have apartments. He told us that at the community meeting. And that is not the case, because Duke Energy has a right of way over half of that property. Duke Energy runs parallel to my entire property. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Anita Shaughnessy. You have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anita Shaughnessy. I live at 7420 Gilderson Glen Court, and my property will be directly affected by this proposal. I am adamantly opposed to the proposal. I have similar concerns with others expressed here, including the noise, the light pollution, congestion, dangerous traffic conditions, leaking oil and gas on gravel close to our neighbors' residential wells, as well as Lake Norman. In addition, the Babe Stillwell boat storage doesn't align with the 2040 community plan as stated earlier. And your comment about houses is really well taken, because honestly, my family and I would not have purchased our house in Birkdale had it been close to a boat and RV storage. I implore you to really consider the impact of this proposal sandwiched between two residential areas. It just does not make sense. I drove around, I Googled on, the number of boat and RV storages in the Cornelius and Huntersville area. There are over 24, in addition to one being 2.6 miles away, right on 73. So I ask you to consider the proposal. Why do we need another boat and RV storage sandwiched right between two residential areas? Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more person who has signed up to speak, and I'm struggling with the last name. So Jane Stites. Okay.
Janie Stites, 7837 Stilling.
Thank you.
Thank you to the ladies that spoke before me. They did really well. I live in the senior community. I am part of the Glens. I originally lived in the Glens for a short while, and then when they built housing with the Glens, I bought one of the houses. So my house backs up to Babe Stillwell, and I can see all the traffic going back and forth all day, all night. I can hear the cars zooming up and down. They think it's 55, it's 35. It's a curvy road. And it's a residential area. People walk, they walk their dogs. I see people with strollers coming from Gathering Oaks, coming from Birkdale. And if you have RVs and boats, and people go out to the lake, it's close to the lake. It's a great idea, but not there on Babe Stillwell. It's nice to be close to Blythe Landing, but people are gonna come off the lake. They do drink, surprise. They're gonna come off the lake in the evening. They're gonna be going up and down Babe Stillwell. They're gonna have problems. There's gonna be an accident. It's gonna be year-round. It's not just gonna be a few months out of the year that people are gonna be out on the lake. We're in a great area. People wanna go out to the lake all year round. They go fishing early in the morning. They're out there in the afternoon and the evening, so we'll constantly have additional traffic. Ever since they opened up Birkdale to Babe Stillwell, I see it all the time, the traffic going back and forth. We've got the seniors that walk and cross over. I've seen them with canes, and it's gonna be dangerous. And yes, I was at the original meeting about a month ago, and when we asked questions, Mr. Lieberman and his associate got a little bit of upset, and they mentioned that, well, they could put low-income housing there. To me, that was a threat. You may live in the area, but I've lived there for over 12 years. I'd like to keep it residential. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm a senior, so it's past my bedtime.
Board members, are there any other questions for the applicant or for staff before I close this public hearing?
One point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
I want to amend my answer. There would be a 10-foot buffer required if there was a church or a school there. My apologies.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you. Any other questions from staff? Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. We will now move to the last public hearing of the evening. This is petition R23-03, Ultimate Athlete. Mr. James, we'll wait just a moment and let folks leave, and then we'll get started. Okay, folks, as you leave, we're going to get ready to shut the door to the chamber so that we can finish this last public hearing. Mr. James, I would like to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hope you guys aren't getting tired of me yet. It's my last one.
No, it's the Jesse James Show tonight.
There it is. Please enter the staff report into record. This is for R2303, Ultimate Athlete Conditional District Rezoning. This one's pretty simple. Currently, it's neighborhood center. Proposal is highway commercial. Neighborhood center allows indoor recreation only. Highway commercial allows outdoor recreation. So therefore, the applicants are applying for highway commercial conditional district to allow for indoor and outdoor recreation. The site plan is shown on the screen. The adjacent properties there are residential. They were at the neighborhood meeting, or a community meeting, sorry. The proposed site plan has one minor modification. You see the northern part of the property. There is a 10-foot buffer required. There's a 30-foot buffer, there's a 30-foot buffer required. They're proposing a 10-foot buffer. It's worth noting that the situation that they have proposed moves the driveway access and driveway situation, so there is room for the 10-foot buffer, but that is the one modification. They are proposing to allow for an outdoor patio out of the back and just to simply have outdoor recreation for working out in the backyard. There's no proposed equipment or impervious surface other than the patio. One clarification we do need on the application and site plan. The representative for the applicant knows of this. It was kind of a late catch, but there is a small piece of the property that is still general residential. So the application would just need to be changed to show the general residential going to highway commercial. You can see that small .171 portion that would need to be brought into this same rezoning. I believe the representative said that would not be a problem. It was just a minor miss on the site plan and application. Staff request that be changed. The 2040 community plan has this designated as an activity center, so it would allow for these type of service uses. We believe it's compatible with the area, be a good addition to the general area, so staff is in support of this rezoning. That's it.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. Any, Commissioner Phillips?
I don't really have a question so much as a statement. That piece of property, my entire life, has always been something commercial. It was a lighting store, and then it was Joann's Fabrics, like, before I was born. So I just wanted to clarify that like, my little slice of Huntersville, we've always known that as a commercial spot, so I don't feel like it's, I just wanted to clarify that, because it is a neighborhood, but that's what it's always been.
Right. Commissioner Boone?
I just have a statement too, Madam Mayor. I went to the neighborhood meeting, and Mr. Martin, who's in the audience, is, I guess, the head trainer there, and there was a young man that wanted to be trained, but he couldn't afford it. So Mr. Martin went to him, he said, if you mow my grass, I'll train you. And I think that says something about a small business owner. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you. I just, to piggyback on Commissioner Phillips, I've known that building as a lighting building for the past 20 years since I've been hanging out in Huntersville, so I'm right there with you.
It's worth mentioning, it is indoor, it was approved for indoor recreation, so it is commercial still. They just want the outdoor aspect of it.
Understood.
I just wanted to clarify that because so many people are new to the area, and literally, like, the commercial on that side of town, since before I was born, was Joann's Fabric and the gas station. So we're progressing.
There you go.
Planning board members, any questions? Okay, so no one has signed up to speak on this particular topic. So if there are no other questions, seeing none, I will close this public hearing. Thank you, sir. We will now move into other business. Item 10A, this is land development fee change request. Mr. Trott?
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Come before you tonight to ask you to review and evaluate and hopefully approve increases or changes to the current land development fees. So the town had the land development plan review and inspection from the county back in 2019. The town has since then obtained our soil erosion and sedimentation control ordinance from the state. We obtained that originally back in November of 2019, and we received our continued delegation from the state after a review and audit from them back, and that was approved in February of this year. The fees from the program are collected and used 100% to fund the program itself. So the staff and all the costs of that are from the fees that the developers pay to review the plans and inspect the projects over the life of those. So it's not just the cost of reviewing the development plans, but after the development gets started, it's the cost of going out there and inspecting it every single month. There's monthly required inspections as long as the project is open. So until they finish. That is not usually just 12 months, but that could go on for 5 or 6 years after they start. So it's a long process. The fees we collect are at the very outset of the development, and then they go through all the way to the very end. Just some quick facts from current year budget for the program is about $850,000. Proposed budget for next year is a little over $1 million. That's for increases in costs of the program. The fees on the program have only been increased once since we've had it, and we're seeing some increases in costs, just like everything else. Also looking to add another staff member, as we have a lot of projects in town, and there's a lot of stormwater concerns and questions. So we need another staff member for inspection, and then we needed a vehicle so that they can get around town to be able to provide that inspection. So the request before you tonight is to modify those land development fees, and then have a quick table here at the end just to show how our fees, what they are currently, what they're proposed at, and then how they compare to the county land development fees. Anthony mentioned at the very outset of the meeting about there being one fee that's above the Louisa fee. It doesn't look like it in the chart, but for the large subdivision preliminary plan over 10 acres, once you get very large in your subdivisions, the town fee would be above the county fee for those very large subdivisions. This current fiscal year, I think we've had 4 or 5 of these major type subdivisions, so not a lot, but those developments don't just get started and get finished in 12 months. They go on for years, years at a time, and can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. So no questions. Commissioner Partee?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve a land development fee change as requested.
There is a motion. And there's a second. That was Commissioner Boone, correct? All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Trott. Thank you for all the work that you all have done, truly. Trying to get that right. The next item on the agenda is to adopt a resolution for the Bud Henderson Sidewalk Project. And Mr. Trott.
Hello.
Hello again.
Yes. So before you tonight is a resolution to be able to acquire right-of-way and/or easements for construction of the Bud Henderson Sidewalk Project. Just a quick little background, Bud Henderson Road is on the west side of town. between Beatty's Ford Road and Vance Road. Currently, there's sidewalk along the majority of the north side of the road, except for one remaining piece. There's one remaining piece, and this is the project that we're working on. And there are 4 parcels impacted, 2 of which are owned by a homeowners association. So we're looking to fill in the gap there in red with sidewalk along the north side of the road. Once that's completed, then there'll be a continuous sidewalk from Vance Road just to the east, all the way out to Beatty's Ford Road. It's about 1.33 miles of sidewalk. So our request is to acquire, be able to acquire a portion of those properties to put in the sidewalk. And just one other thing to note is we have some developer escrowed funds from a developer in this area to put in sidewalk. And those funds have a sunset date from 10 years after the funds were deposited. Finance confirmed that those funds were deposited in January of 2016, and they need to be expended within 10 years. So we're getting closer toward the end of that, so I want to be able to move forward and use those developer funds on the project. And then this is the listing in the resolution of those 4 parcels. Try to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Commissioner Kidwell?
All right, thank you, Mr. Trott. Just to be clear, have we talked to these 4 people, or are we just getting ready to get into that?
We're getting ready to start. We had talked to one property owner that I believe has sold since then. They were asking about it when we started the project, but they've since sold their home.
So with the resolution, and why when we got our pre-packet, I asked for this to be bumped up. You always go back here to number 2, in the event any parcels or interest cannot be acquired, eminent domain kicks in, things like that. You know my feelings on that, don't really change, so.
Yes, and there's the statement at the end of that that says any aspect of that has to come back to the town board.
Right. Problem is, when we first got this wasn't fully included it was in the consent agenda. So that's why I've asked it to be up here, and that's why I wanted to be clarified. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to know how much is in the escrow fund from the developer.
The initial deposit was a little over $140,000. I'm looking for Patty, but she's not here. It was a little over $140,000 that was initially deposited.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion? Commissioner Partee?
Motion to adopt the resolution to acquire right-of-way easement for construction of Bud Henderson sidewalk project.
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion carries and that resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Trott.
You're welcome, thank you.
We are now going to move into mayor and commissioner reports. Commissioner Phillips.
No update at this time.
Commissioner Boone.
Yes, ma'am. I got a fire department report, and fire department's celebrating a 100-year anniversary, and they are selling these T-shirts for $15 at station number 1 right across the street. It's a fundraiser. Looks pretty nice. Mr. Kidwell has the gray color. The blue is by far a better color looking on me. Gray matches your hair, sir.
Thank you.
Oh.
And my eyes.
Wound.
Thanks. Good burn, good burn.
Commissioner Kovacs. I don't know how you're going to follow that up.
Like Norman Chamber, this week is Small Business Week, April 30th through May 6th, and we literally have events and sometimes every single day and sometimes 2 a day. And here's the list. Tomorrow, Tuesday, May 2nd, 7:30 to 8:30, Huntersville Connection virtual networking event via Zoom. For credentials, please contact Leslie Reed. 3 to 4:30, professional development seminar on digital marketing, get a big digital voice for 2023 on a small biz budget. Speaker is Courtney Wolfram, Small Mouth Marketing Change location, Lake Norman Chamber. Wednesday, May 3rd, 9 to 10:30, nonprofit roundtable hosted by the Hope House Foundation and held at Moy Hall at the McIntosh Law Firm in Davidson. 6 to 8, small business event of the year, WSIC 105.9 FM and Facebook Live with Bill Russell and Joe Vagnone, presented by Novant Health Huntersville Medical Center and featuring Douglas Marion, Sam James, Thomas Holden, Tracy Alston, and Steve Gilliand. Thursday, May 4th, 5 to 7, Business After Hours, Freedom Boat Club in Cornelius. And lastly, Friday, May 5th, Small Business of the Year reception for a small business from Cornelius, small business from Cornelius, Davidson, Huntersville, and Mooresville. Location is at the Lake Norman Visitors Center.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next CRTPO meeting is on May 17th at 6 p.m. Commissioner Boone is going to attend for me. I have a work obligation I must take care of. I do have a conference call scheduled tomorrow with members of CRTPO regarding the redesignation. I will let the board know how that conversation goes.
Thank you. Commissioner Barty?
Thank you, Mayor. On Saturday, May 6th, we have free paper shredding, 9 a.m. in Veterans Park. Also, I want to announce that on May 5th, from 6:30 to 9 p.m., I'll join our Greenways, Trail, and Bikeways Commission members for our second outdoor Wine on the Vine event. Tickets are $15. There will be live music, finger foods, plus 2 glasses of wine. Tickets can be purchased online. And as always, I will always advocate for gun safety, especially in homes where guns are stored and children are present. Accidental and intentional discharge causes serious injury and death, and the Huntersville Police Department has free gun safety locks. Organizations and individuals can contact the police department or me at dparthuntersville.org. Let's be child safe. And finally, I want to bring awareness to the nonprofit organization named Cool Kids Clubhouse in honor of Dan Jensen, located here in Huntersville. Cool Kids Clubhouse mission is devoted to improving the quality of life for pediatric cancer patients. Check out their website, and if you can, donate. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you. I just have a quick report. The first one is with the EDC. The EDC is currently working 38 total projects. 30 of those projects are in Huntersville. Project Proton is nearing a press release, so be on the lookout for that coming soon. And students can apply for a summer internship on the website. So the Pivot program through the Lake Norman EDC in partnership with the county, they received a grant to offer 21 summer internship opportunities for high school students ages 16 to 18. These are in advanced manufacturing facilities. These students can be interested in marketing, sales, service, leadership, HR, anything on the line, anything that's under the roof of an advanced manufacturing facility. And so we have manufacturing facilities who have stepped up. This is an 8-week program or 160 hours. It is a paid internship opportunity, $15 an hour. There's also a stipend for any additional training that those students may need, in addition to transportation stipend and clothing stipend if they need like steel-toed boots or what have you. So you can look for that application. It is on the Lake Norman EDC website. That is www.lnedc.com. And they're taking those summer internship applications now. And then next week is just a reminder that it is International Economic Development Week. And that is my report for the EDC. Last but not least, and I wish I'd brought it in here, but there is a big trophy sitting out in the lobby to the left here, if I'm facing the lobby, And I just have to say, Huntersville brought the trophy for the Mayor's Fitness Challenge home. Yes, bring that trophy in. I am very proud of our Huntersville residents. Thank you, Major, who worked so hard for Huntersville to bring that trophy to Huntersville. And, you know, on the side, we don't have the label here yet, but Davidson won this in 2021. Cornelius won it in 2022. But for this next year, it is going to sit right here in Huntersville. So thank you to all of the Huntersville residents who came out and made this happen for our community. And to be honest, the best thing, this is huge and I can't see anybody over it. We'll just sit it here. How about that? The best thing about the whole Mayor's Fitness Challenge was getting to talk and meet with new people. I mean, we had these wonderful community events where we got out, we walked the greenways, we played pickleball. Oh goodness, we walked more greenways. We exercised out in a community with all three communities up at Bailey Park or at Bailey Middle School off their football field. And just having an opportunity, we bowled together. I just can't forget the bowling. But we just had a great time getting to know one another. And isn't that what community is all about? It truly is. So while bringing home the trophy's fun and it's great, but getting an opportunity to interact with our residents was the biggest thing. So I thank all of you for logging your minutes, including all of our board members and all of our staff. Just a huge thank you. So with that, are there any closing comments? All right, well, seeing none, I would like to say goodnight, Huntersville. Motion to adjourn. Yes. Second. Second, all those in favor? Good night.